Story 1. My grandfather on my dad's side was short and had a full head of hair. My grandfather on my mom's side is 6 feet 3 inches tall and bald. I am short and bald, while my brother is tall and has luxurious hair. Story 2. My family gave me the metabolism of a sloth, the hairline of a stressed potato, and the eyesight of a pirate squinting into fog. Basically, I am 70% lasagna, 30% disappointment, and somehow still allergic to grass. Thanks, ancestors. You really nailed it. Story 3. Incredibly poor dental condition. My wisdom teeth were the worst. They deteriorated as soon as they emerged. The nerves, however, functioned perfectly. The pain was excruciating. Story 4. No male in my family, both paternal and maternal, has lived past 65. Every single one has died of cancer. I just turned 50 this year, and I take much better care of myself than any of them, but it is likely just a matter of time. Story 5. There are numerous mental health issues in my mother's side of the family. My great-aunt has schizophrenia, my uncle had bipolar disorder and addiction issues that led to a significant criminal record before he passed away. My cousin, his son, has obsessive-compulsive disorder, and I am almost certain that my other cousin, his sister, is either a psychopath or, at the very least, a deeply troubled person who takes pleasure in the suffering of others. As for me, I have Asperger's syndrome, bipolar disorder, and severe anxiety, with social anxiety being the main concern. Interestingly, my mother and her father, my grandfather, seem unaffected, but from what I know, everyone else has experienced some form of serious mental health issues, including my grandfather's brother. Story 6. The men in our family never live past 70, but my grandmother is in her late 80s. Story 7. On the medical forms with checkboxes for family history issues, I check more than half the boxes. Story 8. My father's family are giants, and my mother's family are overweight and covered in hair. I never stood a chance. Story 9. I had such bad allergies, but it turns out I just had a serious issue with my nose. I underwent surgery last September, and I can't believe how much I've been missing out on all these smells. Story 10. I am allergic to everything that grows outside, thanks to my dad. I also carry the burden of arthritis that affects everyone in my family. My grandmother had issues with her hips. My mom used to call me Thunder Thighs when I was a size 5. Story 11. I unfortunately inherited my father's overactive sweat glands. My kneecaps get the sweatiest and look like I jumped into a pool after a 1-mile run. Story 12. My mother is autistic, and my father has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and obsessive-compulsive disorder. I am autistic, have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, severe depression, anxiety, and am currently being assessed for bipolar disorder. Every day is a challenge. Story 13. My dad once lovingly said to me, "You belly flopped into the shallow end of the gene pool." It is a bold statement, considering more than half of these characteristics came from his side. Story 14. My father is practically hairless, with nothing on his legs at all. I, as a female, have body hair like a Neanderthal. Why is that? Story 15. I have a combination of migraines, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, neurodiversity, and 10 wisdom teeth. Now that I am in my 50s, I am finally able to get work done to fix the poor extractions and problems left by my last dentist. At least getting things repaired has reduced the number of migraines. I no longer feel uncomfortable smiling now that crowns and veneers have been installed to fix the cracked enamel. I was hoping to receive a diagnosis of autism, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or both this year, but I do not want to end up on any lists. Story 16. Acne at 40, gynecomastia, and feeling unattractive in a family of beautiful people, along with severe myopia. Life is good. Story 17. I face significant challenges, including anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder type 2, a blood clotting disorder, migraines, epilepsy, ankylosing spondylitis, irritable bowel syndrome, hypotension, dental issues, and asthma. These conditions stem from my family history. Story 18. I am still experiencing acne breakouts at 25, simply from touching my face at some point during the week. Others can dip their face in mud and seem to be fine. When will this puberty issue come to an end? Not that it matters, as my face is already scarred for life. Story 19. My dad's scoliosis and pot belly, along with my mom's lack of curves, make me look perpetually pregnant. Thank you, Mom and Dad. Story 20. Mental illness, diabetes, heart disease, poor dental health, short stature, gastrointestinal issues, and worst of all, poor appearance. Additionally, a short life expectancy. However, considering my circumstances, that may actually be a blessing. Story 21. Half white, a quarter black, and a quarter Mexican. I have excessive body hair, and my head hair takes a literal hour to comb out. I still can't walk into a store without being labeled a shoplifter. Story 22. I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and bipolar disorder in my family, with thyroid issues on both sides and a history of factor V Leiden. I also experience chronic cold sores and autoimmune disorders. I had shingles at the age of 9 or 10 due to my weakened immune system. I dealt with severe acne and body acne throughout puberty, and I needed braces, headgear, springs, and bands for my crooked teeth. I am not planning to have children. Story 23. Dyspraxia, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, a nonverbal learning disability, carrier of sickle cell anemia, which means my children might have it, asthma, astigmatism, peanut allergy, and feelings of inadequacy. Story 24. Hong Kong Chinese descent, male pattern baldness. I had beautiful long, wavy hair when I was 15. Story 25. My family is quite tall on my dad's side and quite short on my mom's side. Both my younger siblings were taller than me while growing up, and genetics affected me significantly. I visited the doctor several times during my childhood because I stopped growing at age 15. My mom is 5 feet 1 inch or 1.56 meters, and I am considerably shorter than that, just 4 centimeters above dwarfism. My siblings are 5 feet 9 inches or 1.80 meters. It can be challenging to be taken seriously most of the time. Story 26. There is a reason I have an amazing beard and never shave it off, and it is not because I look great with a beard, even though I do. It is because of the genetic gift my mom gave me, a double chin that I am very self-conscious about. Story 27. As a boy, I always wanted a beard when I grew up. It's not happening with my patchy beard genetics, but at least I have great hair on my head. Story 28. I have an autoimmune disease that attacks the moisture glands in my face. My eyes range from dry to extremely dry. Story 29. I have acne scars because of my dad, as well as mental health issues. My dad's family is not the brightest, and my grandmother has a histrionic personality disorder. The rest of my mom's family struggles with severe anxiety. It's generational. I have developed adjustment disorder, depression, generalized anxiety, and depersonalization derealization disorder. Story 30. Scoliosis, several autoimmune issues, hypermobility that my physical therapist thinks is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and an addictive personality with an unstable mood. It's quite a range. Autism isn't exactly losing the genetic lottery, but it certainly comes with challenges. Additionally, I have experienced significant trauma that exacerbates all of these traits. I feel as though I lost the genetic lottery and didn't even have a stable home life to compensate for it. Story 31. Not a drop of blue blood to be found. The Ivy League was not discussed in the dining room, nor was a position in the family business available. Story 32. I am the only one of my 4 siblings who has to wear glasses. I started losing hair at 17 and experienced one of the worst cases of acne, which left my face scarred. Additionally, I am genetically predisposed to testicular torsion. Fortunately for my brothers, they did not have to experience this like I did. Also, while most people have 5 senses, I do not have the sense of smell. Story 33. My entire family has lived into their 90s, except for my parents, who were non-smokers and non-drinkers and died of different cancers at 51 and 55 years old. I am 60. My younger sister is a cancer survivor, and while I am currently healthy, I am terrified. I have treated my body worse than any of them. Story 34. Puffy vagina runs in my family. No matter how skinny or loose my pants, shorts, or skirts are, I have a camel toe or a formed upper pubic area. Story 35. My mom told me I have a popping jaw. My dad passed down keratoconus, which is a condition characterized by bulged or curved corneas, inherited from his mother. Story 36. I inherited hyperhidrosis, or excessive sweating, from my dad. My teenage years were difficult because I could not wear clothes without having large pit stains. I adopted a goth style so that my clothes wouldn't appear so obviously wet. I wore black every day. I finally had surgery to address this when I was 17, and it changed my life. Story 37. My father passed down his weight issues to me. My mother contributed her depression, anxiety, and thin hair. I've thankfully avoided developing my father's addiction issues as well. However, alongside the negatives, I've also inherited some positives. I possess my father's adventurous spirit and motivation to thrive in life, along with my mother's good-hearted nature. Story 38. Increased risk of heart attack and stroke due to hereditary blood pressure issues. My maternal grandfather had a heart attack, and my father takes blood pressure medication. Attention deficit/hyperactivity disorder is also a concern. Story 39. Depression can be overwhelming. At this point, my entire family is affected by it, and they can take medication for relief. However, medication makes me feel unwell unless it's for my allergies and asthma. I also suffer from severe migraines. Story 40. Inherited soft enamel and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is a challenging combination. I have spent tens of thousands on my teeth and continue to spend around $2,000 on them each year. Story 41. I am slightly nearsighted, my teeth are slightly misaligned, and my rib cage is flared. My father is farsighted, and his side of the family has a record of relatively straight teeth. Story 42. Nature dramatically trumps nurture. I thought I escaped a life full of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and autism spectrum conditions, only to pass them on. Addiction is a cruel master. I grew up with these challenges and tried hard to provide my children with a great life, only for them to face the same issues. Nature points at me and laughs for thinking I could do better. Story 43. So far, I have developed all known inheritable medical conditions in my family on both sides. These include slow metabolism, obesity, polycystic ovary syndrome, hypothyroidism, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and bipolar disorder, as well as gastroesophageal reflux disease and flat feet. That is just to name a few. I don't know how I managed to get every single one of these chronic conditions. It's genuinely surprising. Story 44. My family has a history of diabetes, heart disease, Crohn's disease, and autism. At 40 years old, I have autism and Crohn's disease. However, every male on my mother's side of the family was bald before turning 20, and I still have a full head of hair. Despite taking medication, including recent infusions which state hair loss is a side effect, I am still maintaining my hair. Story 45. My dad has straight brown hair, but it has the wiriness of my mom's curly black hair. My hair is as bouncy and manageable as an old-school shaving brush. If I wear a toque or knit hat in winter for more than 5 minutes, my hair stands up crazily for the rest of the day. Story 46. Addiction to alcohol and drug abuse affects many individuals. Despite the challenges, I remain strong. It is difficult to deal with this hereditary struggle when it is ingrained in my blood. Story 47. Predispositions to mood disorders, fibromyalgia, obesity, diabetes, skin cancer, and possibly ankylosing spondylitis are present. Most conditions manifested before I turned 25. I am now 41, and my diabetes remains in the prediabetic stage, while I am still cancer-free. That said, both my parents were above average in intelligence, and I inherited that trait. So I have that advantage, which is quite positive. Story 48. Thick Irish blood. I have high blood pressure at 42 and had stents placed at 57. My brother died at 42 from a heart attack. My mom had congestive heart failure. She lived to 87 but suffered a stroke at 80 and underwent a 4-way bypass at 75. My dad also had high blood pressure and had a 4-way bypass at 56. He lived to 88 before dying of cancer. Without the medications for high cholesterol and high blood pressure, I don't think my parents would have lived that long. I am 65 and currently take 3 medications for high blood pressure and cholesterol. Story 49. I am diagnosed by professionals with autism, generalized anxiety disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, obsessive-compulsive disorder, treatment-resistant depression, severe dyslexia, severe dysgraphia, familial hypercholesterolemia, genetic predisposition towards type 2 diabetes, congenital spinal stenosis. Both parents also have it and had to undergo fusions early on. That's mostly it. My siblings all fall along the same line, but to varying degrees. Story 50. I have a child who was born deaf. It turns out my wife and I both carry the same rare recessive gene that leads to Usher syndrome. This condition causes individuals to be born deaf and to lose their peripheral vision during childhood. Story 51. I have an excessive amount of body hair and also the gene for baldness. I have plenty of hair in places I don't want it and no hair where I do want it. Story 52. High cholesterol, low thyroid, wide hips, pale skin. On the positive side, both my parents look younger than their age. Story 53. Body type and metabolism. Growing up, I was slim and athletic and never seemed to gain weight, like nearly everyone on my mom's side of the family. All the women are petite and stay that way as they age. My mom was a cheerleader and maintained her looks and figure throughout her life. I hoped I would be like her. However, as I got older, no matter how much I tried to watch my weight, I began to get rounder and less fit like the women on my dad's side. They are all short and stocky and continue to gain weight. I'm starting to resemble my paternal grandmother along with my aunts and cousins on that side. I think genetics has doomed me. Story 54. Mom had a big nose. Dad had sinus problems along with debilitating headaches and infections. Thank you all. I really needed to find relief for my sinus issues. Story 55. There is a 100% chance of developing diabetes. Every uncle and aunt from both sides of the family, as well as both parents, are diabetic. There is more, but I do not wish to recall my entire medical history. Story 56. I inherited alcoholism, addiction, depression, body dysmorphia, and a host of other non-visible problems. However, I am tall, lean, and fairly good-looking, so I guess that's all that really matters. Story 57. Almost everyone in my family is average to tall for the New England area in terms of height. My mom is 5 feet 7 inches, my dad is 5 feet 11 inches, and my brother is 6 feet. All my uncles and male cousins range from 5 feet 11 inches to 6 feet 3 inches, while my aunts, grandmother, and female cousins are between 5 feet 6 inches and 5 feet 8 inches. This includes both my mom's and dad's sides. Then there is me at 5 feet 3 inches, like my grandmother on my dad's side, who was about 4 feet 11 inches when she passed away. Story 58. I feel attractive, but I struggle with social interactions and cannot flirt effectively. I also find it difficult to recognize when others are flirting with me. I often feel awkward and do not experience what some refer to as pretty privilege. Others tell me I am attractive. While I may not see it myself, I acknowledge that I have a nice physique and an appealing face. Story 59. I have a small jaw and narrow shoulders. I also can't grow much facial hair. It's quite patchy. At least I'm tall, even though no one else in my family is. Story 60. Apparently, I have my grandfather to thank for being 30 and already going gray. Having a high-stress job probably didn't help, but I have more gray hair than my boss, who is a decade older than I am. Story 61. I, like my mom, grind my teeth and have terrible tension headaches. Unlike my mom, I experience them daily and cannot function without a form of headache relief medication. Story 62. Basically, all the other men in my family have bad backs. I turn my head awkwardly, and I can throw my back out just like my dad, brothers, cousins, uncles, and grandfather. Getting older is challenging. Story 63. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, poor metabolism, depression, anxiety, polycystic ovary syndrome, endometriosis, dental issues, risk of heart disease, and to top it all off, risk of breast cancer that has historically skipped every other generation. The last family member to have it was my great aunt. Story 64. MTHFR may sound like a swear word, but it refers to a gene where I have at least 2 mutations. The issues associated with this condition are numerous, but it can lead to toxic buildup because amino acids are not produced or utilized properly by the body. Story 65. Well, there is alcoholism, but if we stay off alcohol and do not smoke, we tend to live long, interesting lives. I am in the latter group. Fingers crossed. Story 66. Height. One side of my family is tall, while the other side is 5 feet 7 inches or under. Guess which side I fall under. Story 67. Every male on my father's side has type 2 diabetes by age 11. We manage it well, but the insulin and insurance companies put a lot of pressure on us. Story 68. Both my parents have short necks. I have a shorter neck. My dad was an alcoholic, but he stopped drinking after being hospitalized for a different reason. I drink a lot, but I will never be as bad as he was. Unfortunately, I don't know much about the genetics from either side of the family. Story 69. I have great skin, a lovely hourglass figure, beautiful hair, and a well-shaped body. However, I struggle mentally with bipolar disorder and a history of alcoholism on my mother's side, along with ADHD and autism likely inherited from my father and possibly my mother as well. I have a great body, but I have no idea how to dress it to look appealing. Story 70. Cancers affect both sides of my family, with every form of cancer you can imagine. I am concerned that I will develop one of them. Story 71. Being tall is challenging, especially when it's all in your torso. I'm not extremely tall, I'm 6 feet 3 inches. But since most items are designed for people 6 inches shorter than me and are compliant with accessibility standards, every countertop is too short for me to work uncomfortably. My back always hurts because I am constantly hunched over to do anything at work. I do not fit in cars properly without tilting my head to the side or hunching over like a character from a movie. Rearview mirrors are positioned exactly where a car would appear in my line of sight at an intersection. I have nearly had an accident several times because I couldn't see the approaching vehicle behind the mirror. Additionally, it is painful when someone sets the seat higher than the lowest position, and I do not expect it. I have accidentally hit my fingers on the ceiling fan while getting dressed more times than I can remember. Ouch. I also have very little body mass, so my pants slide right off unless I tighten my belt significantly. Anyway, rant over. I am still thankful to have arms, legs, eyes, ears, and everything else. Story 72. Autoimmune disease, poor eyesight, and a tendency for hypertension and diabetes. At least I won't go bald, which is nice, I suppose. Story 73. I'm not attractive. Additionally, I have cancer on both sides. Most of us are over 6 feet tall, so hitting our heads on things is a real issue. Story 74. Heart attacks affect nearly everyone on my dad's side and strokes on my mom's side. I'm a ticking time bomb. Also, intelligence can be a burden. I'd rather be uninformed. They seem so much happier. Story 75. I have experienced nearly every medical issue related to them except for seasonal allergies. I managed to avoid that one. Story 76. Every other generic disease or cancer is on one side, except for heart disease. The other side solely addressed heart disease. Story 77. How did they do me dirty? My sister got off with barely anything. Meanwhile, I have the deluxe edition of mental, physical, and emotional struggles. Story 78. I have had 2 different doctors comment on 2 genetic oddities I have been blessed with. My dentist informed me that I have a wide mouth and a large tongue. Even with all that space, I still bite my tongue quite often. Additionally, he mentioned that I have a big mouth. The other doctor was a podiatrist who noted that I have very wide toenails, which would be fine if I also had wide toes. As a result, I am prone to ingrown nails. Story 79. The men in my family are either really short or really tall, with usually no middle ground. I ended up being 5 feet 4 inches tall, but my preteen nephew is already taller than me, so I know where he landed in this genetic lottery. Similarly, our lifespans are either very short or very long, with no in-between. My great-grandfather barely reached 60, while my great-grandmother just missed 100. My grandfather is following in his mother's path, and my father is experiencing health issues just past 60. So, it's a 50-50 chance for me when I reach my 50s. Story 80. Psoriasis and epilepsy are conditions that can impact individuals significantly. I chose to undergo a vasectomy to prevent passing on certain genetic traits. Story 81. Well, I have premature ovarian failure and I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and autism spectrum disorder, and I am at risk for other disorders, all literally due to a single partial gene mutation. I also have an autoimmune disease that is strongly correlated with genetics. Story 82. Depression and barrel chest affected me, so no matter how much I hit the gym, the middle of my chest was always bigger than my pectoral muscles. Story 83. Allergies and mental illness. While they also don't believe in mental illness, I have been navigating this myself for 30 years. At least I'm finally getting medicated. Story 84. I am autistic, neurodivergent, have attention deficit disorder, and I am an introvert. According to my family, this is all my fault. Story 85. I have a big forehead, anxiety, and depression, and I feel like I'm the only one who looks unattractive in my family. Everything just feels off. Story 86. Pin straight, fine hair tickles my face. I can't find it, style it, or grow it out long. Women in my family usually start balding around 50. Story 87. Grandfather died at the age of 66 from liver cancer. My mother also died at the age of 66 from liver cancer. My siblings and I will all need screening. Story 88. The cancer that affected my mom, granddad, and great-granddad is genetic, so I have a challenging future ahead of me. Additionally, my mom passed down her unusual little toes, which I have now inherited and passed on to my son. Story 89. I'm 27, but on my dad's side, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD, is a family curse. My dad, grandmother, and most of her siblings all passed away before the age of 60 due to COPD, as they were all smokers. On my mom's side, there are issues with spine health. At 27, I already have degenerative discs in my lower spine. Story 90. Degenerative disc disease has affected me from a young age, making me the earliest in my family to experience it. Chronic pain is a curse. You feel it constantly, yet no one can see it. Story 91. My dad was 5 feet 11 inches. My grandpa was 6 feet 2 inches, and my mom is 5 feet 6 inches. My genetics decided to split the difference and make me 5 feet 8 inches. Story 92. Resistance to most painkillers. Doctors assume I am not being truthful. Then I describe everything I can still feel when the medication has taken effect. Story 93. I have a sensitive stomach. Not in the sense that I get grossed out easily, but in the way that even a slightly spicy meal gives me heartburn. I experienced heartburn as a teenager, and since then, I have had stomach issues after any meal my body did not tolerate well. This condition seems to run in my family, from my grandpa to my dad to me. Additionally, I struggle with eczema, which flares up unexpectedly. Once again, this appears to be a family trait. Thank you, family. Story 94. A bunionette, also known as a tailor's bunion, has developed on my left foot by my pinky toe, likely inherited from my maternal grandmother. She has undergone surgery for bunions and hammer toes, and she loves wearing heels. She has a large collection of them, which probably contributed to her toe issues. I inherited her genes but never wear heels. Thankfully, my condition is minor. I could consider surgery to correct it, but it doesn't really bother me as long as I wear proper shoes. Here is an X-ray of my bunionette. Story 95. I inherited my father's stature and my mother's height. Thankfully, I missed out on the undesirable traits as well. Story 96. My mother is 5 feet 9 inches tall. My father is 6 feet 1 inch tall. My maternal uncle is 6 feet 3 inches tall, and my maternal grandfather is 6 feet 4 inches tall. I am 5 feet 3 inches tall and the oldest but shortest sibling. Story 97. I ended up with multiple autoimmune disorders. One is a rare form of inflammatory arthritis, affecting fewer than one person per 100,000. Thank you, Dad. Story 98. Bags under my eyes from a young age, inherited from my father, and larger than average upper arms, inherited from my mother. Neither of these improve with age. Story 99. High cholesterol, started medication at age 20, flat feet, poor eyesight, an inability to process dairy, and a spine that tends to rotate. Story 100. Addiction, small breasts, small buttocks, narrow hips, underweight, and finding it difficult to gain weight. Overall lack of curves. Otherwise, my genetics are actually quite good. There are no genetic diseases in my family. Story 101. Blood pressure issues, diabetes, and cholesterol are all genetic. I am grateful for our medical system in Canada. My doctor is proactive and attentive, and I am also staying informed thanks to her. Story 102. My mother's side has given me generational trauma, a high risk of glaucoma and cancer, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. My father's side has contributed to autism, significant trauma, and myopia. Story 103. My parents and younger brother all have perfect vision, while I am likely close to being legally blind without my glasses. It took my parents until 7th grade, after years of my complaints about my eyesight, to take me to an optometrist and get glasses. My parents and younger brother have little to no allergies, but I was finally tested in my early 30s and found to have high sensitivity to nearly every allergen, including all types of grasses and trees. I have experienced terrible tinnitus for years, despite having no inner ear damage. I have suffered from significant eye floaters since childhood. Despite my best efforts, including semi-annual dentist appointments for cleanings, I have poor dental health and should have probably received orthodontic treatment in my youth. On a positive note, I possess high intelligence, have always looked younger than my age, and have never broken a bone. Story 104. I have a form of colorblindness that is essentially monochromatic. Many family members on both sides have varying degrees of colorblindness, but my condition is more advanced. Fortunately, I don't need to wear sunglasses outdoors all the time like most people with monochromatic vision. Story 105. Based on recent family medical history on both sides, if I do not die of a heart attack in my 60s or cancer in my 70s, I will probably end up with Alzheimer's in my 80s. Story 106. I'm going bald. I'm naturally thin, my heart can power a V8 engine. I have no chronic health problems and no allergies to speak of. The male pattern baldness is affecting me, that's for sure. Story 107. I have inherited male pattern baldness from my mother's side. Many of the men in my family experienced balding in their teens. I thought I had escaped this fate, but at 35, I noticed significant thinning at the back of my head. Now, I choose to shave it all off. Story 108. All sorts of skeletal and skull abnormalities, congenital heart defects, autoimmune disorders, intolerances to gluten and lactose, hypermobility, polycystic ovary syndrome, endometriosis, bowel and stomach cancers, leukemia, and mental health issues. Geneticists have recommended that none of us reproduce. Story 109. My mother's side of the family has a history of hypermobility, swollen ankles, endometriosis, and significant mental health challenges. My father's side also has swollen ankles, along with autoimmune disorders, joint issues, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Life is challenging. Story 110. I am emotionally unstable and have a higher risk of developing cancer or heart disease. On the other hand, I am naturally thin, somewhat attractive, and very good at standardized tests. Story 111. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, seborrheic dermatitis, phimosis, nervous gastritis, asthma in childhood, now resolved, and hyperhidrosis. Story 112. Familial hypercholesterolemia means I can grow more facial hair than most middle school boys, which isn't ideal for a woman, along with mental health challenges. Story 113. Tomorrow marks the 1-year anniversary of my passing. I actually died twice. A heart attack from my mother's side of the family struck early. Every man in my family has died from heart attacks, and all the women have experienced one as well. I suppose I now have 2 birthdays, so there's that. Story 114. I had uneven breasts before having children, but it wasn't very noticeable. Now, after 3 children, one is a DD cup size and the other is barely a B cup. I also had severe overcrowding of my teeth before getting braces. I looked quite unusual. Additionally, I have dealt with mental health issues. Story 115. My mom told me as a child that three things run in my family: diabetes, cancer, and divorce. But one thing that doesn't run in my family is me because I have flat feet, which is also genetic. Story 116. My siblings and I have a wide range of mental disorders. Between us, we have 11 different genetically inherited and professionally diagnosed mental disorders. Story 117. My mother's side has the BRCA gene, and my father's side has poor cardiac health. However, both of my grandfathers lived into their 80s with full heads of hair. Story 118. A larger nose and almost an underbite. On the other hand, there is lots of fine, wavy to curly hair and green eyes. A little of this and a little of that. Story 119. Migraines, hypothyroidism, autism, and nearsightedness. I also experienced some mental health conditions and a higher risk of various types of cancer. Story 120. I always knew I would go bald. Every single male relative in both my mother's and father's families went bald in their 20s or early 30s. When it happened to me, I was not surprised or particularly bothered. I am slightly annoyed that neither of my brothers went bald. Story 121. Dad's side of the family has an average height range of 5 feet 9 inches to 6 feet 3 inches and a full head of hair. Mom's side of the family has an average height range of 5 feet 5 inches to 5 feet 10 inches and experiences hair loss. I am 5 feet 9 inches tall and have had hair loss in the past, which required a hair transplant around the age of 25 to restore my hairline. Story 122. I am predisposed to myopia, a slow metabolism, and eye conditions. I wear thick glasses and have gained weight. However, I do not have any eye problems yet. Story 123. My mom was stunning and thin while my dad was very muscular. I resemble my dad. On the plus side, I am really strong. Story 124. Varicose veins. My great-grandfather had them, my grandfather had them, and my mom has them. Guess who has them now? Story 125. Dad had heart disease and mom has diabetes. The entire family has a history of hereditary alcoholism. It has been a challenging experience of clean eating, abstaining from alcohol, and exercising. Story 126. My mom has autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. She gave birth to twins. My sister has autism. I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. At least we do not have both. Story 127. Autoimmune disorders. My father has Crohn's disease. My two aunts, his sisters, have colitis. My great-grandmother from that side had rheumatoid arthritis. As a result, I have immune thrombocytopenic purpura, a rare autoimmune disorder where my body destroys platelets, making me a bleeding risk when it acts up. Story 128. I am overweight regardless of my activity level, have multiple autoimmune conditions, autism, ADHD, and I am intelligent enough to see how all of that has affected me. Now, my skeleton is dissolving, but I do not know if that is genetic. Story 129. Dad was full Italian, and mom is half German and half Irish. I inherited the full Italian nose and don't resemble my mom, who is better looking than my dad, despite him being handsome. Story 130. I am adopted. When I was 27 years old, I had a heart attack and began researching my family history. I met my birth mother, grandmother, and uncle, and they started listing all the health issues, of which I have a couple. Then I met my father, who shared all of his family's health issues, and I have a couple of those as well. Oddly enough, my dad and I share many of the same illnesses. I have been telling them for about 20 years that I intend to sue them because they created an effective product and then did not support it. Story 131. Ridiculous allergies. I have an amazing resilience to common illnesses. So every time I've been sick, it's something exotic, hard to treat, and life-threatening. Story 132. I have had 9 injuries to my left foot over the past 10 years. It always hurts when I run, but I manage to cope with it. Story 133. I am a 5-foot-tall, fully grown adult with a tendency towards alcoholism, obesity, and heart disease. Therefore, I cannot reach the top shelf, nor can I indulge in fast food or alcohol to comfort myself. Story 134. Respiratory problems and a high tendency to form kidney stones. I have had gray hair since I was 10 or 12, which resulted in having the hair of a 40-year-old by my 20s. Story 135. Not sure yet. My grandfather had 3 brothers. They all died from heart attacks in their 30s. My grandfather survived all his heart attacks. Am I blessed with a healthy heart? I haven't had a heart attack yet, and I'm in my 40s. I don't smoke, and I drink moderately. What actually caused my grandfather's death was amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. I get myself checked for that every 2 years. Story 136. Diabetes, high cholesterol, the likelihood of breast cancer, mental illness, and possibly dementia later in life. That's just from my mother's side. I know nothing about the man whose genetic material contributed to my existence. I know that he passed away at 54, but I do not know how or why. Story 137. Autism, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, anxiety, depression, prone to cavities, prone to cancer. This is all I know at this point, and I'm only 19. There will probably be more information in the future, as I potentially have a long life ahead of me. Story 138. We tend to have 2 options for how our life ends. 1. Sudden aneurysm and dropping dead instantly around our late 40s or early 50s. Totally losing our minds and becoming a burden on everyone around 60. We do get to keep our hair and look about 10 years younger than we are, though. So cool. Story 139. My mother is Chinese and my father is Australian. I have that hybrid vigor. I only got sick enough to stay home from school once every 2 or 3 years. My wife, on the other hand, believes her father's family line may be cursed. She lost, on average, 1 week per term of school due to illness. She also deals with anxiety, autism, and attention deficit/hyperactivity disorder, and has 2 disabled brothers who we may have to care for after her parents pass away. I underwent genetic testing before having children to ensure I am not a carrier of her brother's condition. Story 140. My ancestors gave me anxiety and a tendency to focus on every calorie. It feels like no matter how little I eat, I am still overweight. I feel as if I have to eat 1 meal a day and exercise a lot just to maintain a small amount of weight. I know it's not their fault. The majority of my heritage is Irish and Native American. We have faced significant challenges throughout the centuries. Story 141. More like how they didn't help me. My dad is 6 feet 2 inches tall. His brother is 6 feet 4 inches tall. Both my cousins, my dad's brother's daughters, are over 6 feet. One is 6 feet 3 inches tall. My mom is 5 feet 5 inches tall and the shortest in her family. I am 5 feet 2 inches tall. I feel like a hobbit at family functions. It's infuriating. Story 142. It hasn't hit me yet, but both my parents had cancer. The type of cancer my dad had is not hereditary, which is a positive for me, but it also made treatment less straightforward. Both my parents wore glasses, and so do I. Story 143. I'm Irish and as pale as whipped cream. I have tried self-tanners, but even the palest ones look comical on me. Thanks, Dad. Story 144. Arthritis, autism, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, high blood pressure, a family history of alcoholism, and bowel cancer are the conditions for which they are currently testing me. Story 145. My thighs have a lot of cellulite, more than normal, and the skin on my thighs is wrinkly. Cannot wear shorts. Even friends of mine who are heavier than I am have plump, smooth, and firm legs. I am neither skinny nor overweight. I remember my mom had terrible legs, and I thought that would never happen to me. Now I wear swim pants. I really have to, for all our sakes. Story 146. I have one eye with astigmatism, which is considered legally blind. This condition caused me to lose a full scholarship to West Point. Story 147. I have celiac disease, which has a strong genetic basis. I am the only known member of my family affected by it, and I was diagnosed when I was 16 months old. Story 148. All 5 children have back issues. 4 siblings underwent back surgery. I did not, but I had several abdominal surgeries. I told them I would trade places with them anytime. Additionally, there are allergies. Story 149. I have that whimsical childlike demeanor, and I dislike it because I enjoy being cheerful and kind. However, people tend to fetishize it, which is strange. I present myself in a youthful manner, and it attracts unwanted attention, making it uncomfortable for me to be myself. Story 150. Every type of unfortunate news is represented here. Maternal grandmother, lung cancer, deceased. Maternal grandfather, liver cancer, deceased. Paternal grandfather, colon and kidney cancer, deceased. Paternal grandmother, Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, heart disease, deceased. Mother, diabetes, heart disease, strokes, deceased. Father, alcoholism, still alive. Story 151. Diabetes, liver issues, kidney problems, balding, closely set eyes, and a prominent nose. Overall, I feel overweight and unattractive. Story 152. My height, I'm short. On the plus side, I doubt I will go bald. Both of my grandfathers died with a full head of hair. You win some and you lose some, I guess. Story 153. 5 out of 7 women on my maternal side have been diagnosed with breast cancer. No genetic link has been found so far. Story 154. I am short, not conventionally attractive, and have autism and obsessive-compulsive disorder. I also face health challenges, and I often feel uncertain about my longevity. Story 155. I have Marfan syndrome, but I'm not tall. I'm just lanky and nearly blind in my right eye. Thank you, Dad. Story 156. Mom had an intellectual disorder and was bipolar. She was treated poorly by her family, and they continued that behavior towards me. They even spoke disrespectfully about me to my own child in front of me, as if conducting an intervention. On my dad's side, we all seemed to have autism. My dad was like Spock. I wish I were joking, but no one was diagnosed back then or knew about it. It was just normal to have a pocket protector-wearing science nerd dad who made ozone in the basement for fun. Family dinners with extended relatives were interesting because he had a morbid sense of humor and would always talk about death and other taboo subjects. Story 157. Most of the older adults, including all 4 grandparents and some older aunts and uncles, have had serious heart issues. My grandfather passed away at 50. 3 of them had diabetes, and my paternal grandfather had Parkinson's disease. My maternal grandmother died at 77 because her heart function was so poor that even a pacemaker couldn't sustain it. My paternal grandmother wasn't even 70 when she died during open-heart surgery. I am deeply concerned. Story 158. I look exactly like my bio mother. I now tell everyone I resemble my grandmother, and I can accept that. Story 159. My mother was tall and slender, with a beautiful head of hair, flawless skin, strong joints, and a metabolism that kept her slim until she passed away at the age of 80. My father had thin, lifeless hair and was shaped like an apple by the time he turned 40, experiencing osteoarthritis while still in his 30s. Story 160. Mental health issues disproportionately affect my calves compared to the rest of my body. I am petite and they do not match at all. I feel disappointed that I did not get colorful eyes, but I am grateful for my strong legs and for being able to see. Story 161. Nothing. I am a 6'4" middle-class straight white male with no significant health issues. Demographically, I won the lottery. Anything I didn't accomplish is all on me. Story 162. My knees hurt, I have asthma, and I also have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and Tourette syndrome, while my brother only has 2 of those conditions. Thank you, genetics. Story 163. I will likely die of cancer or heart disease. Even the healthiest members of my family end up with one, the other, or both. Story 164. I inherited my mother's extremely crooked teeth and my father's brittle teeth. My mouth is a nightmare. The majority of my teeth are broken, and I have undergone significantly more dental work than the average person would in their lifetime. I am currently considering having all of my teeth removed. I am only 28. Story 165. I reached my peak height in 6th grade. At 5 feet 4 inches, I am practically a giant in my family. I also have high blood pressure. Story 166. My Irish heritage predisposes me to melanoma. I have been cancer-free since 2014. I watched my grandmother die from melanoma, and it was truly horrifying, so I stay on top of my screenings. Story 167. I'm so bottom-heavy it's ridiculous. Small on top with smaller breasts and a tiny waist, but I have thunderous thighs and colossal calves. Thanks, Mom. Story 168. My mom is short but broad with big shoulders and a large rib cage. My dad is tall and lanky with narrow shoulders and hips. If things had come together differently, I could have been the perfect girl, short and petite. Instead, I inherited my dad's height and my mom's robust build, making me strong and sturdy. It's fine now, but it was not so easy to deal with in middle school and high school, especially in the 1990s when thinness was idealized. Story 169. Short stature and poor eyesight. My 4-year younger brother, however, has perfect eyesight and is almost 6 feet tall. Life has rarely been fair. Story 170. I have been mostly bedridden for 11 years due to a genetic condition. I became severely disabled right after college. Story 171. My mom is half black, a quarter Hawaiian, and a quarter white. My dad is part white and part Native American. All of my siblings have beautiful combinations of features. Tall, tan, athletic builds, thick full heads of curly hair, black, brown, or bright natural red, clear bright skin, and green or hazel eyes. And then there's me, the ugly duckling. I am short with a greenish-purple type of pale skin. Think every single vein is visible and straight, dull hair that is an orangish-brown. I have no curves, just skin and bones, patchy discolored skin with lots of acne, and gray eyes, unfortunately not blue, just straight gray. I have grown up feeling envious of my siblings. I also feel very disconnected because, as the only white person in my family, I am unable to participate in the culture. I often feel present but never truly connected in any way. Story 172. Autoimmune disorders, alcoholism, high risk of heart failure, and suicidal tendencies are all attributed to my dad's genetics. However, my mom's Italian heritage has blessed us with good looks. Story 173. Tiny hands. I would have been much cooler with the ladies if my fingers could strum and play guitar. Alas, I had to make do with my charming wit. Also, type 2 diabetes. Story 174. I have poor eyesight, I'm 5 feet tall, and I'm overweight. However, I have good skin and good teeth. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.